The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, worlds, and civilizations. Among them lived the Valari, a gentle alien race who had never known war. Their planet, Valara Prime, was a world of blue oceans, silver forests, and cities shaped like art. The Valari were small, slender beings with crystal-like skin that shimmered under their suns. They valued music, sculpture, and philosophy more than power or conquest. For centuries, the Valari thrived in peace. They traded with other species, offering their art, medicines, and knowledge. In return, they received protection from the great powers of the galaxy. The Valari believed that harmony and kindness were enough to keep them safe. But the galaxy was not always kind. Far away, a rising power grew the Keth's dominion. The Keth were a warlike species, tall and brutal, with ships like blades and armies that conquered without mercy. They expanded quickly, devouring weaker civilizations. Worlds that resisted were burned, their people enslaved or destroyed. The Valari knew of the Keth, but they believed the Galactic Council. A union of strong empires would stop them. Then, one by one, the Council powers turned away. When the Valari asked for protection, the Council gave excuses. The Keth were too strong, too dangerous. Helping the Valari would risk war. Trade routes were closed, fleets were recalled, and the Valari were left alone. The Valari leaders gathered in their council hall. Voices full of fear. "They promised us safety," said Elder Serena, her crystal skin dim with sorrow. "We gave them centuries of art and medicine, and now they abandon us. They will not fight for us," answered another. "To them, we are too small, too weak. We are nothing." The Valari were a people without weapons, without soldiers, without armies. They had no idea how to fight a war. All they had left was hope. So they sent out a call. Across the stars, the Valari broadcasted a message. It was simple, desperate, and full of sorrow. "We are the Valari. We are under threat of destruction by the Keth Dominion. We have no armies, no defenses. We are peaceful people abandoned by those who once called us friends. If any species hears this, please help us. Do not let us vanish from the stars." The message traveled through space, passing through systems and relays. The Valari waited. Days turned to weeks. The galaxy was silent. The great powers did not answer. Merchant guilds deleted the message, afraid of losing profit. Pirate bands laughed at it. Most civilizations ignored it. The Valari Council lost hope. "We have called into the void," Elder Serena whispered. "And the void has answered with silence." On the planet's surface, families held each other, preparing for the end. Children were told stories of beauty and peace, even as shadows of Keth warships appeared in their skies. But then, something strange happened. One day, a faint signal returned. It was not from any of the great powers. It was not from a strong empire or mighty fleet. It came from a young, unimportant species far from the core. The signal said, "This is Earth. We received your call." "We are coming." The Valari were confused. They had heard of Earth only in whispers. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, barely a century in space. They were considered primitive, rough, unpredictable. They had no great fleets, no vast empire, no seat in the Galactic Council. And yet, they answered. The Valari gathered to listen to the strange human voice. It was strong, filled with determination, unlike the polished tones of galactic diplomats. "We heard your call. We know what it is to be ignored by the powerful. We cannot promise victory, but we can promise this: you will not stand alone." The Valari were silent. Their hearts trembled. Could this small, young species truly help them? Or was this another false hope? Another promise that would shatter? On Valara Prime, a Valari child tugged at her mother's robe. "Mother," she asked, "who are the humans?" Her mother smiled faintly, though fear still lingered in her eyes. "Perhaps," she said softly, "they are the ones who still remember what it means to care." Days later, a fleet of ships appeared on the edge of the Valari system. Not many, only a handful compared to the massive armadas of the Keth. Their hulls were not graceful like the silver ships of the Council, but rugged, practical, built for endurance. On the lead vessel, the UES Resolute, stood Captain Alina Ward. She was not a queen or diplomat. She was a soldier, hardened by years of struggle on Earth's frontiers. She looked at the Volari world through the viewport, her jaw set. "These people are not warriors," she told her crew, "but they are alive. And as long as they breathe, they deserve a chance to stay that way. The galaxy may have abandoned them, but humanity will not." Her officers nodded. They were not many, not strong, but they had something else resolve. The Volari Council welcomed the humans with awe and confusion. "You came?" Aldair Serena whispered. Almost in disbelief, of course, Captain Ward said simply, "You asked for help." The Volari trembled. "But why?" "You gain nothing. We are weak. The Keth are strong. To help us is to risk everything." Ward looked at them, her eyes hard but kind. "Because someone has to. Because if we turn our backs on you, then what does that make us? We are human. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." The word spread across Valara, prime like fire. For the first time in months, the Volari felt something strange. Something almost forgotten. Hope. But hope was tested quickly. Not long after the human fleet's arrival. The first Keth raiding ships appeared. They were sleek, black, and bristling with weapons. The Volari watched in terror as the enemy ships descended. They expected the humans to retreat, to abandon them just as the others had. Instead, Captain Ward gave a single order: hold the line. The battle was fierce. The Keth ships had superior weapons, stronger shields, and more experience. The humans fought with smaller ships, improvising tactics, using speed and clever maneuvers. They darted between enemy fire, striking at weak points. Sacrificing armor for mobility, a Volari crowd watched the battle on screens. They saw human ships damaged, some burning but still fighting. They saw humans refusing to give ground, refusing to flee. Then, against all odds, the Keth raiders retreated. It was not a great victory. The humans were battered, their ships scarred, but the Volari cheered with tears in their eyes. For the first time in generations, the Keth had been stopped. The Volari Council stood in silence, overwhelmed. "Why do they fight so fiercely?" one elder whispered. Elder Serena closed her eyes, listening to the cries of relief echoing through the city, because she said, "They are human, and humans do not abandon their friends." That night the Volari sang songs of hope. For the first time, their voices rose not in sorrow, but in defiance. Children drew pictures of human ships flying like shields above their world. Families lit crystal lanterns in honor of the strangers who came to protect them. On the Resolute, Captain Ward stood at the viewing window, watching the lights of Valara Prime glow beneath her. She knew this was only the beginning. The Keth would return, and next time it would bring far greater force. But she also knew something else. The Volari were not alone anymore, and humanity, though young and small, had made a choice. They would protect. They would fight. They would stand. The stars over Valara Prime shone cold and silent. The people of the Volari, though relieved by the humans' arrival, were still afraid. The Keth dominion was powerful, far beyond what a small human fleet could resist. Many elders whispered that the humans were brave but foolish. Others feared they would soon leave, like the rest of the galaxy had done. Yet on the EO's Resolute, Captain Alina Ward had no intention of leaving. Her crew worked tirelessly, repairing ships damaged in the first skirmish. Sparks flew in the engineering bay, and tired faces were lit by the glow of welding torches. Supplies were limited, ammunition scarce. But not one human suggested retreat. Ward walked the corridors, stopping to speak with her officers and crew. She carried herself with calm confidence, though inside she felt the weight of command pressing hard. She knew the Keth had only tested them with a small raiding group. The real storm was yet to come. Still, she also knew something else the Volari were watching. Their trust, their very survival, rested on humanity's shoulders. And humanity had always been strongest when others doubted them. The Valari Council requested to meet the humans face to face. A large hall of crystal arches was prepared, glowing with soft blue light. The Valari entered in silence, their delicate forms shimmering. The humans arrived in simple uniforms, standing tall but respectful. Elder Serena stepped forward. "Humans of Earth," she began, her voice calm but trembling. "You came when others would not. For that, we give thanks. But we must ask why." Captain Ward's eyes met hers. "Because you called for help." That was enough. Another elder spoke, his voice sharp with doubt. "You are few. The Keth are many. What can you do against them? Why risk your people for ours?" Ward did not hesitate. "Because the galaxy is wrong to abandon you. Because one day, the Keth will come for us too. And because we believe no one should stand alone." The hall was silent. The Valari, unused to such blunt honesty, stared in wonder. Then Elder Serena bowed her head. "Then you are truly unlike the others. You are not here for profit, nor for power. You are here because you chose to be." For the first time, the Valari felt a spark of trust for humanity. The training days passed. Humanity began teaching the Valari to defend themselves. The Valari were not warriors. Their hands were meant for instruments and brushes, not weapons. Yet the humans were patient. On the fields outside the cities, Valari volunteers trained with simple rifles and learned basic tactics. At first, they stumbled. They could barely hold weapons steady, their crystal-like skin glimmering nervously. But the humans encouraged them, never laughing, never mocking. A young Marine named Private Jacobs knelt beside a Valari youth who fumbled with a weapon. "Don't worry," Jacobs said kindly. "I was worse than you when I started. You'll get it. Just breathe, focus, steady." The Valari youth nodded, inspired by the humans' calm confidence. At night, the Valari showed their gratitude in their own way. They invited humans into their crystal halls, teaching them music played on shimmering strings and offering food made of glowing fruits. Human soldiers, tired from long drills, laughed and sang with their alien hosts. For the first time, the Valari felt the bond of true allies. The shadow of the Keth, but the peace did not last. Scouts reported that a larger Keth fleet was moving toward Valara Prime, not raiders this time, but warships. The Valari trembled with fear. In the council hall, panic spread. "We cannot face them." One elder cried, "Even with the humans, we are doomed. We must surrender." "No," Captain Ward said firmly. "If you surrender, the Keth will enslave you. They will burn your art, your homes, your children's future. There is only one path left: resistance." "But how?" Serena asked softly. "They are stronger." Ward's eyes hardened. "Then we must be smarter, faster, braver." She stood tall before them, her voice carrying like steel. "Humanity has faced stronger enemies before. We have lost battles, but we have never stopped fighting. And when we fight with everything: our minds, our courage, our will. That is something no empire can take from us." The Valari listened in awe. For the first time, they saw war not only as destruction, but as defiance. The battle begins, the human fleet prepared. The Valari civilians were sheltered in deep caverns beneath their shining cities. Valari volunteers stood beside human Marines, rifles shaking in their hands but determination burning in their hearts. When the Keth ships arrived, the skies lit with fire. The Keth fleet descended like a storm-sleek warships with burning engines, weapons glowing with deadly energy. The humans, outnumbered 5-1, launched to meet them. On the bridge of the Resolute, alarms blared. Captain Ward gave crisp orders: "Flank them. Use the asteroids for cover. Don't fight their way, fight our way." Human ships darted like hunters, using speed and clever maneuvers. Instead of direct assaults, they struck at weak points, disabled engines, and lured Keth ships into traps. One human ship even rammed a larger Keth vessel, sacrificing itself but crippling the enemy. On the ground, Keth dropships landed, spilling armored soldiers into Volari fields. But this time, the Volari were not helpless. Alongside human marines, Volari fighters held their ground. Their hands shook, but they fired their weapons. Guided by human tactics, they set ambushes, used terrain, and worked in teams. Private Jacobs fought beside the Volari youth he had trained. When the boy hesitated, Jacobs shouted, "Now, fire!" Together, they brought down a Keth warrior twice their size. The youth's crystal skin glowed with fierce pride for the first time in history. The Volari shed their fear. The turning point, the battle raged for hours. Human ships were scarred, Volari fighters wounded, but they refused to give in. At one point, the Keth breached a city's defenses. A group of Volari civilians huddled in fear as Keth soldiers advanced. Before the aliens could strike, human marines charged, guns blazing, shouting with raw fury. The Keth were forced back, stunned by the sheer will of the humans. Overcome's Ward's voice rang out. "Stand firm. They think we will break. Show them humanity never breaks." Her words lit fire in every heart, human and Volari alike. Together, they pushed harder. Finally, after heavy losses, the Keith fleet retreated. The Dominion had expected easy victory. Instead, they had been bloodied by a small, defiant force. The Volari cities erupted with cheers. Families wept, children sang, and elders bowed their heads in gratitude. For the first time in living memory, they had fought back and won. Aftermath, the battlefield was littered with wreckage. Human ships floated, scarred, some broken beyond repair. The Volari mourned the dead, both their own and the humans who had fallen to protect them. Captain Ward stood before the Volari Council. Her uniform was torn, her face weary, but her voice was steady. "This is only the beginning. The Keth will return, stronger than before. You must be ready. We will fight beside you, but you must learn to fight too. Together, we can make them fear what they tried to destroy." Elder Serena stepped forward, tears in her eyes. She bowed deeply. "Humanity," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You are not just our allies. You are our protectors. You came when no one else would. From this day forward, the Volari will never forget you." The hall filled with the sound of Volari voices, singing their ancient songs. But this time, the songs were not of sorrow. They were of strength, courage, and hope. The promise that night. Stars glittered above the wounded world. Captain Ward looked down at Volara Prime from the Resolute. She knew the war was far from over. The Keth Dominion would come again with greater fury. Humanity's fleet was small, their resources stretched thin, but she also knew something had changed. The Volari were no longer forsaken. They had found a protector in humanity, was still young in the galaxy, had shown its heart the will to fight for others, not because of gain, but because it was right in the silence of space. A warning spread across the stars. Humanity had chosen to stand. The smoke of battle still hung over Volara Prime. The skies were quiet now, but the scars of war covered the planet. Craters marked the fields, broken ships lay across the mountains, and the ground carried the blood of both human and Volari. The Volari had won a victory they never thought possible. But everyone knew it was not the end. The Keth Dominion had been pushed back, not defeated. They would return, and next time they would come in force. Captain Alina Ward stood in the command chamber of the Resolute. Her hands rested on the table as a holographic map of the system glowed before her. Around her, her officers waited for orders. "They will come again," Ward said firmly. "Stronger, larger, angrier. We can't just wait for them. We have to prepare." Her second-in-command, Commander Reyes, frowned. "With what, Captain?" "Our fleet is half crippled. Ammunition is running low. Earth can't send reinforcements this far, not for months." Ward's eyes shifted to the Volari leaders, who sat quietly at the far end of the table. Their crystal-like skin glimmered faintly like fragile glass. "Then we don't just rely on ourselves," she said. "We make the Volari ready. They fought beside us once. Now, they must learn to stand as equals." The Valari elders looked uneasy. Elder Serena spoke softly. "We are artists, builders, healers, not warriors." Ward met her gaze. "That was true yesterday. But today, your people fought, and tomorrow they will fight again. The Keth don't care if you are peaceful. If you want to survive, you must become something new, and we will help you." The training grounds fields outside Valari cities were turned into training grounds. Human Marines drilled Valari volunteers from morning until night. At first, it was painful to watch. Valari hands shook when they held weapons. Their bodies were thin, unused to the weight of armor. They flinched at loud noises, stumbled in formation, and often dropped their rifles. But the humans were patient. They remembered their own history, when Earth's armies had once been farmers, workers, and miners forced to defend their homes. "Again," shouted Sergeant Cole, as Valari recruits tried to march in a straight line. "No, not like dancers, like soldiers. Shoulders up, eyes forward. You're not carrying brushes. You're carrying the future of your people." The Valari struggled, but slowly something began to change. A young Valari named Kalen became one of the most determined. He had once been a sculptor, his hands skilled at carving stone. Now, those same hands learned to hold a rifle steady. At first, his shots missed the target completely. But day after day, he practiced. By the end of the month, Kalen was hitting the mark every time. Private Jacobs. The Marine who trained him clapped him on the shoulder. "See, told you. You've got this." Kellen's crystal skin shimmered brightly with pride. "I never thought I could. But now I know. I can fight." Word spread quickly through Valari cities. Stories of Valari fighters training beside humans gave hope to their families. Parents who once wept in fear now stood taller. Children began drawing pictures not just of human ships, but of Valari standing as soldiers beside them. The bond between peoples was not just weapons the humans taught. They taught courage at night. After long drills, the Valari invited humans into their crystal halls. They shared songs and music that shimmered like light. Marines sat listening, wide-eyed, as Valari performers played instruments that filled the air with harmonies no human ear had heard before. In return, humans taught the Valari Old Earth songs rough, simple but powerful. Around campfires, soldiers and aliens sang together, voices mixing until it felt as though two worlds had become one. Even the children of Valara Prime began following the humans, imitating their uniforms with cloth and sticks. They called themselves Little Guardians and marched proudly behind Marines. He laughed and ruffled their heads. The bond grew stronger each day. The Valari no longer saw humans as strangers. They saw them as protectors, teachers, and friends. The gathering storm but far away, the Keith Dominion did not sit idle. Reports came of massive fleets being assembled. The Keth had been humiliated by resistance from a primitive species and a weak race they thought already broken. Their pride was wounded, and they wanted revenge. On the Resolute, grim news arrived. A scout drone had confirmed it. The Keth were coming, with a force large enough to crush Valara Prime completely. When Captain Ward shared the news with the Valari Council, panic spread. "This is hopeless," one elder said, trembling. "We cannot stand against such numbers." Ward slammed her hand on the table. "No, we will not give in. If they want to take this world, they will have to bleed for every inch of it." Commander Reyes added, "We can't match them ship for ship, but we can fight smarter. Traps, ambushes, sabotage, that's how humanity has always survived against stronger enemies." Elder Serena, though frightened, stood slowly. "Then we will fight with you. The Valari are ready." Ward looked at her and nodded. "Good, because this time we fight together, not as protectors and protected, but as allies." The fire within the day of battle came. The skies above Valara Prime filled with enemy ships. The ground shook as Keth forces descended in waves. But this time, Valari did not hide. On the plains outside their cities, lines of Valari soldiers stood in formation beside human Marines. Their crystal skin gleamed under the sun, their rifles steady. Fear was still in their eyes, but so was determination. When the Keth charged, roaring and armored, the Volari fired. For the first time in history, their weapons struck true. Guided by human tactics, they held their ground. Cielen, once a sculptor, now stood shoulder to shoulder with Jacob's. He shouted commands in his own language, leading Volari fighters in a counterattack. His people followed him without hesitation. "Push forward," Jacobs yelled. "Don't give them space." The Volari surged with a fire they never knew they had. Above, the human fleet fought like wolves against a lion. Outnumbered, they used speed and clever tricks, weaving through asteroids, hiding in shadows, then striking at vulnerable targets. Explosions lit the blackness of space, turning it into a battlefield of fire. The price of resistance, the battle was brutal. Ships were destroyed, soldiers fell, and cries of pain filled the air at one point. A Keth warship broke through the human defenses, descending toward the Volari capital. It would have destroyed everything but Kalen and Jacobs. Led a team in a desperate mission to plant charges inside the city's defense towers. When the ship drew close, the charges exploded, shredding it in a blast of fire. The people of Volara Prime cheered, tears shining in their eyes. For once, they were not helpless victims. They were defenders of their world, but the cost was heavy. Many Volari lay wounded. Human soldiers fell, buying time with their lives. On the Resolute, Captain Ward received casualty reports with grim silence. Each name weighed on her heart. Still, she refused to show despair. Overcomes, her voice rang out strong and clear. "Listen to me. They want us to break. But humanity does not break, and neither will the Volari. Stand firm. Show them that even if they outnumber us, they will never outfight us." Her words spread across the battlefield like fire. Volari voices rose in shouts of courage. Humans gritted their teeth and fought harder. Victory and unity hours passed. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The Keth had expected weakness. Instead, they met resistance so fierce it shook their confidence. Finally, after heavy losses, the Keth withdrew. The skies cleared, their ships vanishing into the dark. Volara Prime still stood. Exhausted but alive, the Volarian humans embraced on the fields. Tears fell freely. For the first time, Volara Prime had not just survived, it had fought back and won. Elder Serena stood before her people, her voice breaking with emotion. "We are no longer the forsaken. We are no longer weak. Because humanity stood with us, we have found strength in ourselves." The Volari sang songs that night, but not the songs of sorrow from the past. These were songs of victory, songs of fire rising in their hearts. Children sang of humans and Volari standing side by side, protectors of one another. The rising fire Captain Ward looked down at the world below from the Resolute. She saw lights glowing in the Volari cities, celebrations of survival. But she also knew the war was far from over. "The Keth won't stop," Commander Reyes said quietly. "No," Ward agreed. "But neither will we. And now the Volari won't either. The fire has been lit. It will spread. And together, we'll make the galaxy remember what happens when you abandon the innocent." Her words echoed like a promise. The Volari had been abandoned by the galaxy, but they had found a protector in humanity. And now, together, they had become something more. A fire had risen, and it would not be put out. The stars above Volara Prime had grown restless. For weeks after their last victory, the humans and Volari worked together to rebuild, train, and prepare. But everyone knew the truth. The Keth Dominion would not forget the humiliation they had suffered. They would return, and this time. They would not underestimate their enemies. Captain Alina Ward stood on the bridge of the Resolute. Reports streamed in from long-range scanners. More Keth ships had been sighted, gathering in the outer systems. "Too many, how many?" she asked quietly. Commander Reyes grimaced. "At least 100 warships. Maybe more. It's a full invasion fleet, Captain. Twice the size of anything we've faced before." The bridge grew silent. Even the sound of the machines seemed to fade. Humanity's entire fleet in the system was only a dozen ships, most already scarred from battle. The Volari, though braver than before, had only a handful of defenses. Against such numbers, their chances were slim. Ward's jaw tightened. So they're finally coming to end this, yes, Rhea said. And if they break through, Valara Prime is finished. The fear of the Valara. When the Volari Council heard the news, despair spread like a dark shadow. The elders gathered in their crystal hall, their voices shaking. "This is hopeless," one said. "We cannot fight an entire fleet. We should surrender before they burn our cities." "They will enslave us if we surrender," another replied. "The Keth do not show mercy. But if we fight, we will all die." The voices rose, panic filling the chamber. Some cried that they should flee into the wilderness. Others whispered that perhaps humanity would leave, saving themselves. Finally, Elder Serena stood. She looked at the gathered leaders with fire in her eyes. "Enough," she said firmly. "Did we not already see what happens when we fight beside the humans? Did we not find strength we never knew we had? The Keth believe we are weak. Let us show them that Volari fire cannot be extinguished." The chamber grew quiet. Serena's voice, once soft and full of sorrow, now rang like steel. "If we must die, then let it be as free people, not slaves. And if we fight, then we do not fight alone. Humanity stands with us." The human resolved. The resolute Ward prepared her crew. She spoke to every Marine, every officer, every pilot. Her words were calm but strong. "The Keth think they can break us because they have more ships, more soldiers, more guns. But we know the truth numbers don't win wars. Will does, and our will is unbreakable. Humanity does not abandon friends. We are here to stay," her crew answered with fierce shouts. They knew the odds, but not one asked for retreat. Ward sent a message to the Volari people. It was broadcast across the planet, reaching cities, homes, and even the children who now marched with sticks, pretending to be little soldiers. "To the Volari," she said, her image shining on their crystal screens, "the Keth come to destroy you. They believe you are weak. But I have seen you fight. I have seen you rise. And I tell you, this humanity will not leave your side. Together, we will stand. And if we must fall, then we fall fighting, not kneeling." Her words spread through the Volari like fire. Fear still lingered, but courage began to glow brighter. The siege the Keth arrived like a storm. Their fleet filled the skies, blotting out the stars. Black warships formed a wall of steel, their weapons glowing like suns. Valara Prime shook as the first bombardments struck. Defense towers crumbled, cities shook, and the air filled with the sound of explosions. The humans fought back with everything they had. Small ships darted between the massive enemy vessels, firing missiles and lasers. They moved like wolves against giants, fast and unpredictable. Volari fighters, guided by human tactics, joined them, sacrificing fear for determination. But the Keth kept coming, wave after wave, relentless and merciless. On the ground, dropships poured soldiers into Volari cities. Human Marines and Volari defenders met them in the streets, turning shining avenues into battlegrounds. Plasma fire lit the air, and the once beautiful crystal towers shook with the sound of war. Kalon, the sculptor turned soldier, led a group of Volari fighters through the ruins. Beside him was Private Jacobs, his human friend. "Hold the line." Kalon shouted in his native tongue, "Do not give them one step." The Volari fought with a courage that surprised even themselves. They ambushed Keth patrols, set traps in narrow alleys, and defended their homes with a fury born of desperation. But the Keth were overwhelming. Slowly, the defenders were pushed back. The breaking point after days of fighting, exhaustion, crushed both humans and Volari. Supplies ran low. Ammunition was nearly gone. Medical tents overflowed with the wounded. On the Resolute, Captain Ward stared at the casualty reports. Entire platoons were gone. Ships had been destroyed. The Volari capital itself was under siege. Reyes approached quietly. "Captain, We can't hold much longer. If we don't do something, it's over. Ward's face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. Then we do something they'll never expect. She turned to the holomap of the Keth fleet. At its center was the flagship, massive and bristling with weapons. Destroying it would not win the war, but it could shatter the Keth's command and give them time. It's suicide, Reyes said. Ward nodded. Maybe, but it's the only chance we have. If we strike their heart, the rest may break. And if we don't, then Valara Prime burns. She opened a channel to the Valari Council. The Keth will crush us unless we take this risk. I won't order the Valari to join us. If you wish to survive, hide. But humanity will go. There was silence. Then Elder Serena's voice came, calm but steady. No, Captain. We will not hide. If you strike, we strike with you. If humanity is willing to risk everything for us, then we will risk everything for ourselves. The final strike the plan was set. The humans in Valari would launch a desperate joint assault on the Keth flagship. Every available ship, every fighter, every soldier was called to arms. The Resolute led the charge. Engines roared, weapons blazed, and the small fleet plunged through the enemy lines. Keth ships closed in from all sides, but humanity's cunning maneuvers kept them off balance. Valari fighters, fragile but swift, followed in daring runs, distracting the enemy with hit-and-run strikes. Some were destroyed, but others slipped through, clearing a path toward the flagship. On the ground, Kalen and Jacobs led a strike team against a Keth command post, drawing enemy forces away from the skies. They fought through fire and blood, side by side, refusing to fall. Above, the Resolute reached the flagship. The massive vessel loomed like a dark mountain, cannons blazing. Ward's ship shook under the onslaught, hull cracking, alarms screaming. Target their reactor core. Ward shouted. All ships, concentrate fire. Explosions lit the void as missiles and lasers pounded the flagship's defenses. Still, it held, relentless. Then Ward gave the final order, ramming speed. The crew looked at her in shock, but none disobeyed. The Resolute, battered and burning, turned its nose toward the enemy's heart and accelerated at the last moment. Ward's voice carried over the comes for humanity, for Valara Prime, for freedom. The Resolute slammed into the flagship's core. The explosion tore through space, ripping the massive vessel apart in a blinding flash. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, stunning the Keth fleet, leaderless. Confused and shaken, the Keth forces began to retreat. The skies cleared as their ships pulled back into the dark. The Aftermath Vela Prime survived. But the cost was terrible. The Resolute was gone. Many brave souls, human and Valari alike, had fallen. The once bright capital was in ruins. On the surface, Kalen and Jacobs looked up at the sky, watching the last of the Keth vanish. Tears filled their eyes, not only of grief, but of victory. They did it, Jacobs whispered. They gave everything, Kalen said. His crystal skin glowed faintly. And so will we, until the end. Elder Serena stood before her people, voice breaking. Humanity came when no one else would. They gave us their strength, their courage, their lives. We owe them everything. But more than that, we have become stronger because of them. We are no longer the Forsaken. We are no longer weak. We are Valari. Her words spread through the surviving people, filling them with both sorrow and pride. The breaking point passed, though broken and bloodied, Valara Prime still stood. The Keth had thrown their might against them and had been forced to retreat. The humans had given everything to protect their allies. The galaxy, once silent, began to whisper. Rumors spread of a young species who stood against the mighty Keth, of humans who chose to protect instead of abandon, of Valari who found fire in their hearts. And though the price had been high, Captain Elena Ward's final promise remained. True humanity did not abandon friends. The skies above Valara Prime were quiet again. The great Keth fleet had retreated, their flagship destroyed, their will broken by the sacrifice of humanity. But silence did not mean peace. The air still carried the smell of smoke, the cities still bore scars of fire, and the ground was stained with the cost of survival in the ruins of their crystal towers. The Valari people gathered to mourn and to rebuild. They lit bright fires of remembrance, songs echoing across the night. The names of their fallen were spoken aloud, human and Valari together, as if one family. Children who had once hidden in fear now looked to the sky with pride. They spoke not of the Keth, but of the humans who had come when no one else had, who had stood as shields when the galaxy turned its back. They called them the Protectors. The weight of sacrifice among the survivors. Grief was heavy. The resolute humanity's proud ship was gone. Captain Alina Ward and her crew had given their lives so Valara Prime could live. The Valari built a monument of shining crystal in their memory, a tower that reached toward the heavens at its base. Words were etched in both human and Valari script. Humanity does not abandon friends. Kalan, the sculptor-turned-soldier, shaped the monument with his own hands. His once delicate fingers were now rough from war, but his heart poured into every strike of his tools. He worked beside Private Jacobs, who survived the siege though scarred in body and soul, as they stood before the monument. Jacobs whispered, "She believed in us all, even when it seemed hopeless." Kaelin nodded slowly. "Her spirit is not gone. It lives in every Valar who fights to rebuild. It lives in every child who will never bow to the Keth again. Humanity gave us more than protection. They gave us courage." The Galaxy Reacts news of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For centuries, most civilizations had treated humanity as little more than newcomers, untested, naive. But now they spoke of them in hushed, respectful tones. Here was a species that had no great empire, no vast armada, and yet they had defied the Keith Dominion. It's one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. They had not fought for territory or riches, but for a people who had been abandoned by all others. The Valari ambassadors traveled to other worlds, carrying stories of human bravery. They described the moment Captain Ward turned her burning ship into a weapon, the way humans fought street by street without surrender, the way they shared their last supplies with Valari children instead of keeping them for themselves for the first time in generations. The Valari were not pitied. They were respected, and Humanity was feared, not for cruelty, but for something far more dangerous to the Keth loyalty. The rebuilding, though victory was theirs, the Valari homeworld lay in ruins. Towers had fallen, fields had burned, and millions were displaced. Yet where despair had once ruled, now determination grew. Humans and Valari worked side by side. Soldiers put down rifles to lift stones, to carry supplies, to plant seeds in the soil. Valari artists painted murals across the ruins, pictures of humans and Valari together, not as master and servant, but as equals. Jacobs became a symbol among the Valari children, who followed him everywhere. They asked for stories of earth, of oceans, forests, and skies filled with birds. He laughed and told them tales of mountains taller than towers, of storms that roared like beasts, people who never gave up no matter how dark the night became. Kaelin returned to his art, but his style had changed. Where once he sculpted delicate flowers and soft shapes, now his hands carved powerful figures, humans and Valari standing shoulder to shoulder, their heads raised high, unbroken. The warning to the Keth Dominion was not destroyed, but they were wounded. Their pride had been shattered by the loss of their flagship, by their failure to crush what they saw as weak prey. Within their war councils, voices shouted for revenge. But whispers of fear spread as well. For the first time, the Keth began to see humanity as a true threat, not because of numbers or weapons, but because of what they represented: an enemy that would never yield, never abandon allies, and would sacrifice everything for a cause greater than themselves. Whispers spread through the Guada Sea, "Do not harm those under humanity's shield, for if you strike them, you strike Earth itself." The galaxy began to shift. Powers that had once ignored the Valari now offered aid, not out of kindness, but because they feared being seen as cowards compared to humans. Treaties were signed, alliances formed, but none could erase the truth: humanity had acted when no one else would. the new alliance in the capital city. Though half destroyed, the Volari built a new council hall. At its center sat not only Volari elders, but also human representatives. The two species pledged an oath of eternal alliance. "We are one people now," Elder Serena declared before the gathering crowd. "Different worlds, different skies, but bound by blood and sacrifice. Let no one in the galaxy forget what was done here. When the Volari stand, humanity stands. When humanity calls, the Volari will answer." Cheers erupted, echoing through the broken streets like thunder. Hope, once lost, now burned brighter than ever. The children of two worlds, months later. As the rebuilding continued, a new generation began to rise. Volari children played alongside the children of human soldiers who had come as settlers to help restore the world. Together, they built games out of rubble, turned ruined plazas into fields of laughter, and painted their dreams on shattered walls. One Volari child holding a wooden carving of the Resolute asked Jacobs, "Will humans always protect us?" Jacobs knelt down, his tired eyes soft. "We don't protect because we have to. We protect because it's who we are. Remember that. Someday, you might protect us too." The child smiled, the crystal glow of his skin reflecting the morning sun. "Then, we will protect each other forever." The legacy of Captain Ward, though gone, Captain Alina Ward's name lived on. Songs were sung of her courage, of the moment she turned despair into victory. Volari poets called her the Starfire Captain, human who lit the darkness with her final blaze. A great festival was created in her honor. Every year, the Volari and humans lit lanterns that rose into the night sky, carrying wishes of peace and promises of unity. Her story became not just a human tale, but a Volari one too. And beyond Volara Prime, her name spread across the stars. Worlds whispered it with awe. The galaxy remembered the day a small human fleet faced a giant and refused to bow. The Protector's legacy years later. As the Volari capital gleamed once more, a new monument was built at the center of the city. It was not only for Ward or the Resolute, but for every human in Volari who had stood together. The statue showed two figures, a human and a Volari, standing side by side, their hands raised as if shielding the world behind them. Beneath it were carved words in both languages. "Together, we are unbroken." Travelers from across the galaxy came to see it. Some mocked, some envied, but most felt a strange stirring in their hearts. For here was proof of something greater than power, proof of loyalty, of sacrifice, of a bond that no empire could erase. The final promise on the night of the dedication. Elder Serena stood before the crowd. She looked at the shining statue, then at the stars. "The galaxy abandoned us," she said, her voice steady, but humanity came. "They gave their lives for us, not for profit, not for glory, but for friendship. Because of them, we live. Because of them, we rise. And because of them, we know this truth. No one is ever truly alone while humanity stands." The Volari raised their voices in agreement. Humans among them raised their fists to the sky and far beyond across the galaxy. The message spread a quiet warning, a proud declaration. Humanity protects its friends. Humanity never forgets. And humanity never surrenders. The fires of war had taken much, but they had also forged something stronger than steel, a bond between two peoples, unbreakable and eternal. The Volari were no longer forsaken.